After all these heartwarming speeches and the good feeling of personal relations here, we have to talk a little bit about sustainable business. I sort of thought about in the end when we talk about sustainability, and definitions were very well made, and your introductory speech was a fantastic speech. You know, I hope we have that on YouTube, because we can educate everyone within 5 minutes on the issues that the aviation sector has. But in the end, I would rather like to start with Laos. Even the longest journey begins with the first step, because it's a very long journey we're on. Aviation probably started that journey already. The industry is in motion, but maybe from different starting points. Yeah? And but frankly speaking, it's a very rocky path we have ahead of us. And the sector needs trustworthy sustainability promoters also for moving forward, for getting the industry in motion. In multiple fields, we need technology, of course. We have a representative of here in our panel who will present you a message of hope, which is also necessary. And of course, we need a good mindset in the businesses that we run, in the big organizations that we run. And communications in the end is one of the key issues that we have to speed up. We need to speed up. Well, maybe we have to imagine Sisyphus being a happy man, you know? But we do not want to end like this, because he was not really successful. We have representatives from 3 continents today. Institutions and companies, they represent on a highly aggregated level, yeah, but also on a very practical, I always say a delivery level, because we need the people to get things done and then to communicate progress everywhere. So please welcome our participants of this panel. The Mayor of Rhodes, of course. We are very happy that you're here. Patricia, but she comes from America, but in the end she's Italian. Patricia, Senior Vice President, General Counsel, Secretary of A4A in the US, or in America. Then Alexander Zinell, representing Fraport, Greece, a very, very successful undertaking of Fraport, and I think the Greek government is also very satisfied with what you have delivered here. Catalin Radu, here, the Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority of Kazakhstan, and Adam Triolo, he represents he's the Vice President of Commercial Business Development of REGENT, a company based in Las Vegas, but doing business at sea level.
We're Boston based. I just have a little place.
We'll have a certain running order, but feel free to intervene if you like and comment on these things. We have, of course, very, very different perspectives on which we look at sustainability developments at all in the end, important drivers in the industries, and you then can see how complex the sustainability issue really is. It's very, very complex affair. We have to communicate this, and today we get insights how far we are on the different continents of this world. And I'd like to start with Antonis Cambourakis, the Mayor of Rhodes, who is telling you about Rhodes and what they try to achieve here.
Dear Mr. Yatru, Professor, Excellency, Ambassador, distinguished guests, dear participants, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, well, everybody came through the airport, so Mr. Zinell, Mr. Kerkloh, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome you all in Rhodes and to congratulate the organizers who provide the opportunity to our island to be once more at the center of worldwide concern for important issues through a forum of highly prestigious and specialized discussions. Air transports have a significant place and value for Rhodes as a top popular tourist destination, and their role is determining the progress and the welfare of our island and of our people. Tourism is the oxygen which our local economy breathes with. It is the foundation of the social cohesion to our land. It is the income of households, the future and opportunities of our children. Tourism without air transport can no longer exist. However, the same stands for the opposite. Without tourism, air transports become, at a great extent, without an object. The phenomenal experience of the pandemic has showed with the most descriptive way the interdependent relation, and we all must take seriously the lessons learned from the pandemic to be prepared for any following challenges that we may face ahead. Therefore, de facto, tourism and air transports are our strategic partners. They land together at the hard surface of difficulties, but they take off together to the horizons of new opportunities and potentials. This is clearly imaged with numbers at the current season of 22. The tourism flow in our island has exceeded the numbers of 2019 and holds new records. The electronic charts of arrivals at Rhodes, the Agoras, Fraport airports were never greater in the past. Rhodes emerges as the great leader of tourism recovery, exploiting absolutely the momentum of human reconnection after the extended lockdown due to the pandemic. This year's summer in Rhodes is really a feast of life, and air transports are those who provide the wings for the summer to fly high with optimism, hope, human will, to exceed the obstacles and move forward to the future. However, we must not rest with those successes. On the contrary, tourism and air transports should be alert for the handling of new challenges that are already emerging or that we may face sooner or later in the future. First of all, pandemics have made a great impact on human resources. Employees who temporarily lost their jobs or are in constant insecurity reached other industries, resulting in many cases in lack of personnel in tourism enterprises, in air transport, in airports. It is important for sector to become attractive again for young people who are looking for permanent working positions, a fact that requires healthy working environment, good salaries, and development potential. Another equally important issue is the response of the climate crisis, which, as it crosses the energy crisis, it makes things even harder. However, tourism as well as air transport market have no other way than this, of sustainability. Sustainability is the only way for everyone. I indicatively remind the joint operation Clean Air Transports developed between the European Commission, the European aerospace industry on development of innovative technologies for the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions. Also, another encouraging fact is the agreement of Aegean Airlines and the Greek Hellenic Petroleum for the first program of use of sustainable aviation fuels, SAF, for flights in Greece. It is very important for our country to promptly adapt to the targets of the forthcoming European legislation for the compulsory use of SAF 200 by 25 to all flights from EU airports. Thus, great challenges are ahead, and through them, the leaders of the new era will emerge. That is why we in Rhodes emphasize the issue of sustainability, with a series of actions for management of daily life, environmental protection, and enforcement of infrastructure. The example of the bridge of Kremasti, which solves a long-lasting problem and ensures the upgrade of the airport connection to the city of Rhodes, is very characteristic. In Rhodes, we start a new era. We want Rhodes to be in the forefront to the application of green policies aiming to promote the island as the first sustainable tourist destination globally. And this was ensured with the memorandum of agreement for the implementation of Rhodes Collab with the global tourism leader of TUI, signed together with the region of Strategia. Today, we plan the sustainable tourism for tomorrow. This is our duty for Rhodes, for future generations, for the millions of our traveling friends throughout the world, who rank Rhodes at its top position on the overall tourism records of the past 60 years in Greece. That is why we work in various sectors at the same time, and because we definitely want Rhodes to be on the top of the sustainable air transport map. Sustainability is the common goal for all of us. The strategic partnership of tourism and air transports can produce many results towards the direction which each part will take its own piece of responsibility and will operate for the common good. The only way to move forward is when we work as partners and responsibly. In December 1944, when the basic rules for civil aviation were signed at the Chicago Convention, USA President Franklin Roosevelt has stressed that the future progress of international civil aviation can help and preserve friendship and understanding among the nations and people of the world. This vision became reality through the course of years, and it must continue to inspire us, especially though we had, through hard conditions that our world is going through. I kindly thank you for the opportunity to speak today before such a special audience, and to wish every success to the works of the meeting, which I am certain that will provide food for thought and food for actions. The municipality of Rhodes and my office is always open to cooperation, common efforts, good ideas, and innovative approaches that can reduce the ecological imprint of tourism and air transport, preserving or even extending the economic imprint in favor of Rhodes and for our future generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I have one question. As you are someone who was political, with a lot of supporters, if you had a wish list addressing, I don't know, governments or also maybe industry partners or other stakeholders, what would be on top of the wish list so that you could speed up your path of sustainability for Rhodes? This is something we would like to get faster.
Exactly what Ms. Nane has said. Understanding each other and thinking seriously of each one's priorities. If I had a wish list, it would be common understanding and an effort to put ego aside. Honestly talking, I'm very optimistic, not because of my personal way of thinking, but because what I see lately in pandemic is that everybody on this table are willing to do things and be more modest and have more understanding and respect to the other side.
At the interest.
Yeah, at the interest of the other side. So the wish list is speaking, understanding each other, and trying. That is all. I don't think it is a matter of subjects. I think it's a matter of principles. And principles are going well lately. Very well.
I thought you would have said I would like to have more money from whoever.
It's very typical in Greece, money exists. So I don't think that
would you like to sit?
I have not prepared a speech as such, so I think I'll stay here.
The next distinguished speaker is Antonis, CEO of Fraport. I already told you that Fraport is a success story, and Rhodes Airport is within this family, this airport family, 40 airports, 40 big airports, and of course it's a subsidiary of Fraport. They have, of course, to commit as airports to European Union carbon targets. Yeah, I mean everybody knows that there is zero emission goal. There are zero emission goals defined by IATA or by the Triolo. The European Union says, well, we want to by the Fit for 55 program already by 2030 to reduce carbon emissions by 55%, which I think is very, very, very ambitious that you can define these targets. And as an airport organization, of course, you have to also manage your service partners. You have to manage the government, by the way, also, or the government manages you. Depends. Yeah. And in the end, also have close cooperation with the airlines that connect to these airports. And I think you will give us an insight on where you are at the moment. Of course, it's a success story.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I speak about Fraport Greece and our efforts in becoming more sustainable, I would like to come back to what you said. We need to also look at the people that deliver. And in that context, I would suggest that the next OPS award goes to the Greek aviation industry, because considering the fact that we are now in July and August 10% up against 2019, and we operate in Greece without major disruptions, disruptions that we see in Northern Europe at airports where capacity has been cut substantially, in Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Heathrow. I mean, it's deplorable. And on the other hand, Greece imports a lot of disruptions from Northern Europe. Still, we are managing traffic that is 10% higher during the peak season without significant disruptions. So I think, just a suggestion, when you think about awards next year, the Greek aviation industry would be a good candidate. But moving on from that, and I'm not talking about Fraport Greece. I consider the whole industry here, which has delivered a tremendous effort. Fraport Greece is a young company. We're a little older than Adam's startup. 5 years. We are now operating 14 airports. 5 years. And in order to understand what we do in sustainability, I would like to take a step back and look at what we were supposed to deliver under the concession agreement. The concession agreement actually doesn't talk about sustainability. We operate under a 40-year concession agreement on behalf of the Greek government. We're the custodians of these airports. And sustainability is not a strong term or even a key objective of the concession agreement. The concession agreement says basically upgrade the infrastructure, extend the infrastructure where necessary, and operate to a very high standard. And also deliver lots of revenues to the Greek government. So sustainability is nowhere to be found other than that we have to obviously observe environmental regulation here in this country. And this is what we did in the first 4 years. In the first 4 years, we doubled we extended terminal capacity by 50% from 200,000 to 300,000 square meters. So the focus of the first 4 years was actually building and upgrading infrastructure that has suffered from lack of investment for a very long time. And that is why it was even difficult for us to establish a baseline from where, when you want to reduce carbon footprint, you need to understand Where's the baseline? But we were actually taking over old infrastructure and building at the same time. So where was our baseline? And obviously, if you increase by 50%, your baseline CO2 emissions will inevitably go up. We're now at the phase where we have established a baseline, now where we are on the trajectory downwards. And we're fully committed in the framework of the Fraport group to show a consistent and concise path to net zero. So this is what we have to do. But more on a more practical level, what I see and where I see a great danger is that while politics provide a framework, and especially the Commission and countries like Germany and France, they push the green agenda forward, which is absolutely fine. However, when it comes to the aviation industry, what they're actually doing is curbing aviation. The German government and the French government, they're clearly saying, and the Dutch government, we want to reduce traffic. So how does that work with our objective of managing basically the biggest transformation in our industry, when at the same time politics say we want to curb, we want to make flying more expensive, we want to reduce the number of flights. Where does that leave us? And I think Mehmet, you nailed it in your speech. We have to preserve, we have to add back resources, we have to change. There's no question about that. But how does it work in a framework where politics decide to actually curb traffic? And that actually shows how different perception is on a political level. Germany, France, Netherlands, they have a clear agenda. The agenda is very different here in Greece. We never talk in our stakeholder engagements when I speak with the mayors, the governors, the people here. They never tell me, it's too loud, what about the noise and the emissions and what would you say, Feinstaub, the ultra-fine particles in the air. It's not a topic. Here in Greece, people ask me, how can you attract more airlines? How can you bring more tourists? How can you extend the tourism season? So this actually shows a big divide between, in Europe, as you put it, tourism is the lifeline of this country. 20-25% of GDP is actually determined by tourism. How does it work with northern countries saying we want to reduce traffic? So this is it's a dilemma in which we're working, and that's why I think we need to, as you said, we need to collaborate with all the stakeholders. That includes airlines, and we still find ourselves in really stupid battles about, shall we reduce the airport fees by €1, €2, and will that drive traffic? We need to collaborate as an industry. And go forward in a practical, in a realistic manner. I think the timelines are somewhat unrealistic given the fact that electric airplanes and sustainable aviation fuels are far on the horizon in terms of real practicality. So this shows a bit. Of course, we are working on this. We are doing everything we need to do to become more sustainable, to reduce our footprint. But it's a long path, and I realize that even more. It's hard work. It's a long road. We need to make the first step. Yes, and it needs a lot of money. But where is that money coming from? And this is not only sustainability. What we see here, and I've discussed it with the governor of the South Aegean region. We've had this year alone 2 major.
Put an eye on Kazakhstan, which, as you all know, is of course one of the largest producers of primary energy. It's with a big fossil footprint. But of course, this is also a starting point to start with. He's of course the head of the Director General of the CAA there. And I think you will talk a little bit about whether and how sustainability is a national issue or becomes a national issue, because we probably have different starting points from where we contribute to this agenda.
And maybe also you could talk about the reference system in which you base your sustainability policy.
Thank you, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be here amongst these distinguished faces and colleagues. Your Excellency, Mr. Mayor, dear colleagues, always a real pleasure and honor to be amongst all of our colleagues. In terms of Kazakhstan, I've moved there 5 months ago. I came from ICAO. We contributed, I remember during pandemic, I worked with Luis Felipe and ACI to build the health accreditation program. It was a success story for all of us, because it's one thing to start putting pieces of regulation on paper, and a totally different story how to implement, how to verify, how to make sure that you end up with a product that is real and can bring added value to all of us. But coming to Kazakhstan, I discovered a nation that is full of energy. It's a young nation with a great vision for the future. They try to change, and especially in the last period, in the last years, they adopted a very aggressive vision for changing the future and adapted to the new world. And because of that, we see a lot of changes happening right now. In terms of green agenda, indeed you said a lot of resources, a lot of mining, oil and gas as well. But the beauty of it is that they try to look always at partnership. They don't have necessarily the experience or the technology to do it by themselves, so they are looking for partners. And because of that, the partners that they bring to the table usually are coming with their own policies, and especially in sustainability, in green. They are strong companies that are right now extracting and working there, and they have their own high-level sustainability standards that they are implementing at the level of the country. Of course, in terms of aviation, we have our own challenges. We just ended up with Corsia not so long time ago. I remember a few assemblies in ICAO where we fight the big level to push this green agenda, and it's remarkable for aviation that they took in their own hands the system and the reporting and the monitoring mechanisms that will make this happen. And we follow. As aviation of Kazakhstan, we were the first, and I think right now we are amongst the few in Central Asia to be part of the voluntary reporting system of Corsia. And we are trying to push hard our agenda, and we are working with our colleagues. It's the voluntary phase right now, so we are trying just to make aware the main stakeholders that it's an important topic. But we are moving forward toward regulating all the aspects, and I think this is essential at this level for any country to make sure that they have in their own legislation reflecting the mechanisms to which they start contributing and being part of the big picture of sustainability. So practically, and I'm talking about us in Kazakhstan, we put in right now a project of law to be modified, and we are working very close with our colleagues in the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Finance. Yes, there are money involved, as you know, but we are working together to change the legislation and to make sure that sustainability is strongly embedded in our national law, and we can play at that level. We are also lucky because aviation in Kazakhstan is quite young, and the main carriers are having the new equipment. So this is by default a big, huge step forward in terms of using the new technologies. And despite of the fact that we still have all aircraft flying, the main commercial fleet, it's quite new, between 3 and 5 years old, which brings a lot of added value to the whole picture. It's also important to know that in terms of regulation, and when we are looking at the access of the new players on the market, even from the commercial point of view, the penetration of the market cannot happen without having your sustainable agenda or your sustainable plan next to your commercial proposal. Everyone is looking at that, and from our point of view as a civil aviation authority, we are sure that whenever someone is coming to say want to open a new AOC here and everything, We are looking through all the elements, but sustainability is there. We also just finished the reorganization of my company, my administration, and if at the beginning we had only one environmental expert in my team, right now I have a whole division tackling sustainability and putting at the right place in our structure sustainability and the focus on this. So we are working with our colleagues. We are trying to be close with ICAO, with the European Commission, with our colleagues from FAA as well, to make sure that in terms of regulation we are prepared and we will have the proper mechanism in place under the ICAO umbrella, under the CORSIA umbrella to make this happen. But it's not easy, but we are there to make and bring the change into the picture, and the only way to do it is to work together. As everyone highlighted, and I think will be one of the main lines of this forum, we need to work together because by ourselves we cannot do much, but only together we can build our future and especially a clean future.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One is, can you give us a little thought on whether the governmental support is meant to be serious support on the sustainability issues? Second is about the primary energy sector. I mean, probably a big contribution could be to increase efficiency, energy efficiency in the sector, like so. And the third one is being one of the future fields of probably improving the carbon footprint of aviation and a bridge technology for probably the next 20 to 30 years, the sustainable aviation fuel. Are there any projects or ideas to become a producer of that one in Kazakhstan?
Thank you, Michael, for these questions. First of all, the government, and you know all, or maybe you heard, used to be a very authoritarian regime in Kazakhstan. It's still very highly hierarchic. But this, from my point of view, brings a lot of added value in terms of implementation of measures that are taken at the highest level. And at the highest level, the green agenda is there. So whatever we're going to do, we have fully support of the government, full support of the government, and this is one of the most important things that you need in your at your level as an agency trying to implement the policies of the government. So this is there as a political will. Also, they are allocated resources because the country is a rich country and they have the capability to manage this. In terms of the industry, at this level, we don't have any producer of sustainable aviation fuel, but we are thinking about, because most of the technology is already there, it's present in the country. So adding some investment and starting to produce it's extremely important. Keep in mind that right now Kazakhstan is trying to become a hub, attracting operators, cargo and passengers. One of the mechanisms is through a low price for fossil fuel. But I think, and it's on the table right now, a discussion to be also a hub where you can go and have sustainable fuel. So we are working on this, and it's a commercial interest of the country to attract business, aviation business. From our point of view, we need to be prepared. The new technologies are also knocking on our door, and we need, from the regulatory point of view, to be prepared to embrace technology, not to be a stop. Usually the easiest way for any authority issuing licenses or certificates is to say no, we cannot do it, we don't have the regulations to do it. And maybe you can explain us, Adam, about how you see that. But in our legislation right now, we are trying to put in place a mechanism which we can allow the flexibility of innovation to be implemented. We treat it as a risk, any new technology. But we have a mechanism to deal with the risk in aviation, safety management, risk assessment. All this is in our hands, so we can do it without blocking the access of technology, without blocking the development of industry. So we are working together with our colleagues from the industry. and we want to be prepared for whatever the future might be. But we are there to make this change, and I think it's important for everyone to know that at our level we want to be part of the big community, and we are there to help. So whatever you might need, we are there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, let's change the continent and we go over to America. Yeah, around the world, probably. And probably, I'm not sure whether this is still right, but at least US Aviation is probably the biggest consumer of fossil fuels still. Yeah, maybe China is approaching that, but America is probably. So this issue in accordance for, in combination with what has been defined politically as sustainability goals, is probably a big challenge. Maybe you can give us an overview of what the scene is like in the US or in America, including Canada, which is at least on the American continent. And what the goals are, and the challenges also. The challenges also because of course it's very competitive. There are differences in the mindset between the US and the European Union. Yet, maybe just update.
No problem. And for those of you who don't know, Airlines for America is the trade association in the United States representing the 10 largest both passenger and cargo airlines in the US. I am the chief counsel, and you're probably wondering why you have a lawyer sitting here talking about sustainability. I think we all realize sustainability has become everyone's business and part of all of our jobs, really. There's no segmentation of this and separation, but also really, I could not pass out an opportunity to come to Greece and see beautiful Rhodes. I've never been here, so beautiful part of Greece. I have to say my first trip overseas, for those of you who know me, as Kostas does, my happiest place is really being in an airplane, and flying all the time. And my first visit to somewhere outside of the United States was coming to Greece, to Mykonos actually last year, and then meeting Kostas and the team shortly thereafter. As a lawyer, I would be remiss as well to say that since we have some media in the room, that this is off the record. It does not represent the views of Airlines for America or any of our CEOs, certainly our airlines. But I don't have prepared remarks. I have a style where I take some notes, but part of the problem with being attention deficit is that you start hearing all these presentations from everyone else and you want to start, you're like, yes, I want to talk about that, yes, I want to talk about this. You're talking about the political climate of the challenges that we have had. Andreas, I think you did a great job of always in setting the stage and really talking about the challenges that we have, particularly when, as you just described us, the biggest polluters, not to demonize the industry, but really try to think of a positive way to handle this, crisis, really, because we are at a crossroad, I think. We have many challenges ahead. I have to say, it's amazing to me how people's memories, how short people's memories are, I think. I remember being through the pandemic, how people just missed aviation, bringing people together, seeing their families, being here and being able to do this. And my gosh, if it's not just 3 or 4 months after the so-called end of the pandemic, which as you said, it's not the end yet, we are, at least in the United States, experiencing one of the hardest periods for regulatory oversight. This administration, it's now all about going back to seat sizes and families sitting together and refunds and all of these different issues that had sort of been tabled for a little while. And now they're back and it's become so incredibly political, it's really a shame because I think we are being used as the pulpit for many aspiring, if you will, politicians that are using aviation as their basis for seeking votes, which is really a shame. We're an easy target. Having said that, I think one of the comments that was made, and it may have been Jeff who said it about how the industry did not give up, and we have been implementing, as an industry as a whole, implementing a number of changes to decrease our carbon footprint over the years, whether it be changes to, and this is in cooperation with the ecosystem of all the aviation industry, not just the airlines, but the manufacturers, and using winglets, for example, to make airplanes more efficient, or buying new technology to redirect planes and how they use the routes. But we do have a real big problem with the air control system in the United States. I don't know if you've ever been in a control tower. It is fascinating that the air control system in the United States is still being operated with little pieces of paper.
But the Europeans are always fans of the American air traffic control system.
Why is that?
Because it's so efficient.
So there's a lot that has to happen, and I think to this theme of the airlines did not give up.
Technology,
Yeah, but the airlines did not give up. In fact, in March of 2021, which was not that long ago, but we were still in the midst of the pandemic, at least the Airlines for America Airlines, which are the largest passenger airlines in the country, changed their commitment, to sustainability, to say that we would be net zero by 2050. It used to be, the goal was to be 50% by 2050, and now it is net zero. We have worked also with this administration. The administration has just recently come up with, the grand challenge, when it has to do with airlines committing to consumption of 3 billion gallons of sustainable aviation fuel by 2030. It used to be 20. We had committed voluntarily to do 2 billion. They asked us to really push for us to come up to 3 billion. That's terrific. The problem is we have not really seen any major government movement to support this need of government and a commercial, partnership, a private partnership to make this happen. We just had, the Inflation Act that was just passed, into law not a few weeks ago, not days, and I lost track because I was on holiday last week in Italy, so I don't remember exactly what dates anything happened anymore. But we did get a blender's tax credit, which is something that we have been lobbying for a long time, but it's pretty minuscule. It's 0.25 cents to 0.75. We estimated that by doing that, at least to the U.S. airlines, that's going to double the expenses, basically, from 4.1 billion to 9.2 billion. So all of these things have huge impacts, and that's the reason why the collaboration is so critical. I know that during the pandemic, we have traveled a lot to Europe. People used to wonder, why is a U.S. trade association doing so many trips to the UK and Greece. Greece was a phenomenal example of following data and science to allow people to come in. That's the reason why that was the first trip I made. It was just very easy and straightforward. You were vaccinated, you came in, you got a chance to be here. The question was always, were you going to be able to return back to the U.S. because you have so if you have to pick a country to visit where you can get stuck, obviously the Greek Isles are probably one of the best to do that. But luckily I never had that issue of going back to the U.S. But it took a long time for the U.S. government to drop that requirement. Mask mandates the same way. Europe was much more advanced by following science on this. Now we have made a lot of improvements. We still have a long way to go. I think that for us really is a combination of sustainable aviation fuel being the top savior, if you will. I mean, obviously new technologies, but we are decades away from this new technology to really, it's a pipe dream. I know that you can make it happen, but it's not going to be something that's going to happen that fast. So in the interim, we have to be able to collaborate, I think, with not just government, private industry, the airports, for example. I think of an airport in the U.S., like Pittsburgh Airport has done a phenomenal job, for example, to get ahead of the curve, starting to think about using their pipelines now to that they actually are able to run sustainable aviation fuel. Because that's one thing, you have the production, but then how do you get it across, right? You can't do it on trucks, or otherwise that just defeats the entire purpose. And it seems like governments, at least we're experiencing, governments are not thinking that far ahead. It's just sort of this immediate, issue of, well, we'll give you a piece of an incentive, but not very much so. Another thing is, I'm Italian by birth and I grew up in the United States. So on both of those counts, I don't believe in government imposing mandates on things. It seems to me that you allow and foster more competition if you allow the free market to work. Once you start putting mandates and requirements, I know that there's a difference of opinion just amongst people in this room, but we do believe that mandates and taxation on fuel into or on emissions, it's not the way to go. For us, we feel, and I know Andreas, what you had said, if the scheme is done right, the problem is in the intellectual sort of thinking. There is a model, but if you really think, even if just the way that the world reacted to COVID alone, it was a disaster. I mean, there has not been any, even though we talked about collaboration, I think the US and Europe probably had the best collaboration to some extent, but we still couldn't get it right. Still, there was not enough reciprocity to really make a difference. And I think if we think that taxation can be applied in a great scheme across the world, I think it's just a hard thing, I think, to do. I mean, I do think that there are certain things that can be done. We have been full supporters of Garcia I think that's, talk about the world coming together in aviation on that plant. We also know right now, there's the assembly, coming up in a few weeks, and the topic of conversation is already changing. The Garcia baseline. Garcia baseline had been set, had been negotiated. Now there's this push for, well, let's just not do 2019 as the baseline. Let's now start doing a combination of 2019, 2020. Europeans want one thing, Americans another, and guess what? The government of both of those, areas in the world don't even agree with industry. So now you have governments that are not supporting their own industry in their own countries, and they're all over the map. Why? My personal view again, it's all politics. It really does become all about politics. And how do we stop that? I don't know. I mean, I think this is, having this dialogue, hoping the new generation that we will all create, with these degrees, I mean, is going to see a different perspective. I think our government is trying, but it's getting derailed by too many politics being in place. And obviously we have midterm elections in the United States in November. That's going to change the climate all over again, and nothing's going to get done, basically. So it's pretty certain that, either one or both of the houses are flipped to the Republican side. So you figure if you have everybody down the line being run by Democrats and they can't get anything done, now you basically combine the checks and balances and nothing will get done over the next couple of years. And then you start getting into an election year again and all of that. So it's a really challenging time, I think, for everyone. I think we are seeing, inflation shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I don't know why people think, oh my gosh, there's inflation. The world was shut down for over a year. I mean, obviously there is going to be inflation. The question is, how do you incentivize companies to continue to compete and bring more passengers? To the point, Alex, about, you're trying to bring more people to the airport, but at the same time, you're limiting people coming to the airport. It doesn't make much sense. I think, to your point on the turtles, which I respect very much, but I think that the bars and the restaurants should not be open either. Why is that to be always the airline industry? When they talk about us, for example, right now with employee shortages, it's all about because, the airline industry in the United States took bailouts. We did not take bailouts. That money has to go to employees. I don't know why anyone would ever think that this was not the financial crisis when banks were bailed out. Airlines had to report where that money was going to only employees, and it only covers 60% of the workforce. The problem is people left, and we're having a hard time, but we're not the only industry. We're having people not wanting to come back to work. I mean, we're seeing that. I don't know what people are doing, because I can tell you from being even here in Italy last week, I'm thinking, where is this money coming from? I have a full-time job, but some of these people, they're there for 2 weeks on vacation on the Amalfi Coast, and I think, where is that money coming from? It's going to run out, and so things are going to start happening. Prices are going to go back up. It's going to become more difficult to travel, I think, because to your point, that's the first thing that's going to go away. It's going to be leisure travel. It's going to be that, and then we're dealing then with the issue of inequities, right? I mean, I think We are all talking about not just sustainability, but we're talking about equity. And, you know, the problem is you have is that airfares go up, and then it's the rich who start traveling again, you know. And so how do you balance the politics of that and trying to, I think when we were in 2019, we really thought that it was the golden age of connectivity, not because the airlines offer the best meal on the plane. I can tell you in flying not American Airlines, but US Airlines, that the service, you know, it's basic, but it allows anyone to be able to travel. If you're willing to take a middle seat and show up to the airport, you still can travel and you don't have to drive for, you know, 10 hours to go on the East Coast of the United States. So how do you maintain it? I think that's the challenge. How do you incentivize companies to be green, but get something back, you know, as a result of that? It does not mean, you know, less profits. I mean, we are not utility companies, and people forget that, you know. The airlines are something that is not a constitutional right, it's not a God-given right. You can fly, you can take a boat, you can take the train. But people want to fly. Why? Because it's the fastest way to get from point A to point B so that you can connect and do these things.
Yeah, but let's
I'll
face
get
it.
off the soapbox.
No, it's fine. But let's face it, tougher regulations will come because of environmental issues. And air travel will become much more expensive, not only because of the fuel cost drivers, but because of surcharges, emission charges or whatever. And of course, it will distort competition maybe between airlines in the US, in Europe, or in the Middle East, and all these things. But the question I wanted to pose to you is, is your organization in a defense mode or in an active mode to support governments in a certain your government in a certain direction to, in the end, make progress on the sustainability, environmental, carbon issue?
So on sustainability, because I think there's separate topics, you know, if you talk sustainability, if you talk regulation in general, consumer protection, those kind of things.
Because that will come, I mean, in the ICAO mode or whatever, the European Union or on a climate council is going to decide this will have impact. Will have impact on the moral side, that's first, but then regulation will follow.
Right. And I think that's the part that makes a lot of the airlines sort of gun shy, if you will, is the fact that, for example, you know, we agreed to increase, you know, the consumption from the goal of 2 billion to 3 billion gallons, with the understanding that the government would do their share and provide support to make that happen. We're not seeing that happen, so it starts making you a little bit uncomfortable, not comfortable, but you think a little bit of this pull or push is a little disingenuous, and with ICAO, that's kind of what we're feeling a little bit. You know, we're seeing that there's a proposal now in this baseline to do 85%. Well, you know, 2019 and then the rest of 2020. Okay, let's just say that the airlines, and by the way, the US airlines do not agree with that. They're staying very strong with 100% 2019, and that's our messaging. Whether we will get there or not, I think, you know, it's always a matter of compromise. But if you start at 85, you'll end up at 70. So we all know that, right? It's just the nature of negotiations. The problem is, you know, we view that even if we, let's say, find a compromise so that we're not on defense mode, the compromise should be that, okay, we agreed to something less than was very much negotiated 2 years ago and agreed upon in 2021. But then in that case, that if we do give in and we agree to something lower than that, then let's just make sure that CORSIA is the only mechanism to deal with sustainability in terms of aviation, and that you're not going to get airlines to bring that down, and the next thing you know, there's going to be taxation, a scheme. So because then that makes it very distrusting, I think, of governments and of entities. And so I think people need to be honest in collaborating to the fact that if we're giving in to this means like give us a break for 5 years or for some period of time, almost like contractual, you know, arrangements that you have. There shouldn't be people breaking contracts all the time, and the governments and, you know, the ecosystem is such that it always seems like let's see how much more we can get. So to answer your question more directly, I think we start on the collaborative and friendly way. And then we are forced to play defense because it does not, people again have short memories, and the next thing you know, there'll be a new administration, politics will take over, and then we'll play defense all over again.
Thank you very much. But ladies and gentlemen, there is hope. And our final speaker, Triolo, he's the Vice President of Commercial Business Development of REGENT in Las Vegas. He will present us a showcase, I would say, on the development or the process of development and testing of an electrical powered sea glider.
No sample?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. We had a video,
So-
but no AV, so.
That's the future mode of transport between Greek islands.
Yes.
Yeah? So this is a potential big market, probably. But in the end, well, this is a showcase, but of course we do talk about can aircraft be powered electrically? Or is there a hydrogen future, and when is it? Probably we still have to wait some time for a commercial use for that aircraft, but it's more than a design study. It's already been tested, and you give us an insight of this project. But I would also like you to talk about the perspectives that you think electric aircraft will have to what extent, and maybe also to a more distant future on the hydrogen development.
Sure. His Excellency, Mr. Mayor, real honor to be here. Amazing to see this group of people, the fact they all get together in Greece every year. We're certainly going to come as long as we're invited. I represent a 2-year-old startup called REGENT, which is an acronym for Regional Electric Ground Effect Nautical Transportation. I encourage you to forget that immediately and just look up regentcraft.com. We are a product of Y Combinator. For those of you that aren't familiar with what Y Combinator is, it's an incubator for innovative startups in the United States. So roughly 5,000 companies come in the front door and 50 to 100 companies come out the back. As those companies exit the back door of Y Combinator, they're greeted with venture capitalists who are equipped to provide funds for their projects. So REGENT is the brainchild of our 2 co-founders, Billy Tallheimer and Mike Klinker. They both hold advanced degrees from MIT. They will work in the eVTOL space, so electric vertical takeoff and landing. In their projects in the eVTOL space, they quickly came to Patricia's conclusion, which was that this is a pipe dream, that while it's highly innovative, it will not reach commercialization anytime soon. Which of the, what markets those products will serve. To give you an example, some of the most competitive eVTOL product out there today will fly roughly 50 nautical miles, carry 400 to 600 pounds of payload, and there's still this very big discussion about, where do you actually go? If you're going to vertiports in the city, you've got the drive time to those vertiports, you've got these takeoffs and landings that pair off other vertiports, and you got to find another ride once you get to the next destination, and have you really saved any time? So looking at that landscape, we came up with an innovative design called a sea glider. It's a 180 mile per hour all electric wing in ground effect vehicle. It travels within its wingspan to the water's surface, but uniquely it will certify as a boat and not a plane. So the whole idea behind this is there actually is a carve-out within the regulations for ground effect vehicles, right? You might be familiar with the Aquanaplans in the past. These were 300-ton weapons of war produced by the Russians to carry huge payloads long distances, missiles, troops, and the like. What we've done is we've taken that wing and ground effect technology, that lifting technology. If you imagine the Aquanaplan, if you haven't seen one before, look on YouTube, but it's a beast. It had these massive 8-jet engines on the front. It was drugged through heavy surf. And they needed all that power to actually break the suction between the lifting surface and the water. So what our co-founders have come up with is a retractable hydrofoil. So hydrofoils have existed forever too. Our lead designer, Brian Baker, is part of Team Oracle America's Cup. A hydrofoil is just a wing for the water. So using our innovative hydrofoil design, it's an active control system, so it's a wing for the water with control surfaces that actuate. So we actually our vehicle looks very much like an aircraft, although it's a boat. It pulls itself through the water using its distributed propulsion, electric motor propellers. We generate lift across that hydrofoil that breaks the suction on the water, and then using our blown wing, we can rotate or take off as little as 40 knots on the water. So our vessel floats, foils, and flies. When we're near the dock and in the no-wake zone, we float on our hull. When we proceed away from the dock, we need to maintain our maneuverability. We can come up onto our active control hydrofoils. And then when we're in the clearway and want to take advantages of turboprop speed, we can come up onto our wing. The vehicle is being designed with all of the latest fly-by-wire technology. So my background was as an aviator. I started out as a sales demonstration pilot for REGENT aircraft company. I moonlight as an airline pilot in the United States on the Airbus 320 and 321. Very familiar with fly-by-wire technology, so too is our team. And we've already designed a vehicle today, 400 pounds, 18-foot wingspan, that has automated all of these complex procedures. So we can automate takeoff and landings, we can automate that hydrofoil control, and we can enable mariners with basic ratings to actually control laterally the direction of travel and the speed. And based on that speed and the amount of lift being generated, we can decide whether we float, the vessel itself, will decide whether it floats, foils, or flies. So, using these technologies, all proven but combined in an innovative way, we can create actually new connection points and a new mode of transportation for people that didn't exist before. We like to say our product line is bifurcated across two primary verticals. We have a $7 billion backlog today. That backlog is shared by the aviation industry. In fact, you may have heard of Hawaiian Airlines. A member of A4A was one of our early investors. We have been heartened to see that all of the major airlines are very, very interested in this space, with ongoing conversations with virtually every major U.S. airline you can think of. And the reason for that is they want to make sure that they plant their flag in electric propulsion, in alternative fuels, so that when the technology is there, they can be ready to capitalize on that and plug into their existing network. So we have aviation service providers, and then we have ferry providers. So the aviation service providers see this as an opportunity to dramatically reduce their operating costs. If you compare our 12-seat, $5.2 million Viceroy, it operates at 50% the operating cost of a Cessna Grand Caravan. So the Cessna Grand Caravan is a single-engine turboprop on floats. It is by far the most economical way to move 12 passengers around the world, and we operate at 50% of that cost. The reason we're able to achieve such exceptional operating costs is because, number one, electric motors have 70% the cost of a gas turbine engine, and number two, electricity is far less expensive. The big challenge after that is really the range issue, right? So we're operating with 450 to 600 kilowatt batteries. Because we operate in that very efficient space that is ground effect, transitioning up onto hydrofoil, we can actually achieve ranges as far as 225 statute miles on new batteries, 180 miles on end-of-life batteries. But that's not enough, right? We have to find a way to really scale this technology. So our other product, and one of the other ways that we've achieved this significant backlog, is the Monarch. The Monarch will carry up to 100 passengers. And the reason the major carriers have shown interest in this kind of product is because not only can we efficiently plug into their existing networks, but we can leverage technologies like hydrogen. Hydrogen really is likely to be the bridge clean fuel source for aviation. And we intend to, we're already in the process of looking at hybrid electric or hydrogen for this larger vehicle. So My role as Vice President of Commercial Business Development, number one, first and foremost, is to build that backlog, right? We're always taking new orders, so for those of you that want to buy a Sea Glider today, we can talk afterward. But number two, to actually work with the team and work with our stakeholders around the world to create ecosystems. So having an innovative platform doesn't mean much if you don't have a way of getting passengers onto your vessels, right? So we're already working with airlines, with ports, with airports to really design very, very clean, secure ways of moving passengers from the aircraft and from the airport to these Sea Gliders, to this existing port infrastructure, and then moving them up and down the coast. So incredibly exciting times. We're highly supportive of all of the major movement, all of the positions that have been taken, whether it's by A4A or by the airports around the world. We think that it's going to take a massive level of collaboration to overcome these technological challenges, to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas that we're actually putting into the atmosphere. And it starts with backing innovative technology. So as far as REGENT goes, we've raised $28 million to date. That is what has funded this vehicle that we've built. This vehicle will float, foil, and fly. We continue our foil testing across, we started in Tampa Bay. We're testing now in Rhode Island. We are positioning for first flight. You will see an announcement on that in the coming weeks. So incredibly exciting times. With that $28 million, we are poised to begin production of the full-scale vehicle, which will be 15,000 pounds, seating for 12 passengers, and that 180 to 225 statute miles of range. That's the Series A event, which will take place in the next 3 to 6 months. So couldn't be more honored to be here. Always excited to talk about what these new types of technology can do for the space and work with all of the important stakeholders that will inevitably unlock those new modes of transportation, those new modes of service that will democratize the way people travel, right? If you can reduce operating costs by 50%, you can reduce ticket prices. If you can find new ways to travel intra or inter-island, then those people that need to travel for their trade, or need to travel for medical services, or need to be rescued because they've been pulled out to sea with riptides. These are the types of services that we can provide to communities that didn't exist before. And we're not here to replace anything. We're just here to really build on all of the amazing successes that have come prior to us. So that's it.
Thanks. Where can we sign in for the inaugural flight?
Next year you have to bring the others.
Yes. It's highly portable. It's good size, but it is highly portable, and we actually have the second iteration of that vehicle in production now. So the plan is to begin touring with the vessel in the next 12 months or so. But first they have to get all of the important learnings on the test side out of it. So that's happening now.
Before I pose a question to all of you, last question, which you very briefly answer, not think about it. I would just like to give you a little thought on how, food for thought on how difficult the road is where we're on. Lufthansa now has decided to use sustainable airport fuel, and their target is to have a 10% fuel usage of SAFs by 2030. So that's the target for Lufthansa. 2030, 10% of fuel. If Lufthansa's group aircraft size about 700 at the moment, 720, would be fueled 100% by SAF. And this SAF then also is carbon net zero produced, which is the major challenge because the energy required for using SAF is huge. So the real challenge is not only to use SAF, but also to
to have primary energy which is carbon free, solar farms or whatever. If Lufthansa, just an example, would fly 100% with SAF, they needed land, but in the size of Mallorca, to do this production, only for Lufthansa fuel. So just to give you an idea of how challenging these technological questions are there. So my last question, just very briefly. We talk about carbon zero 2050. Do you believe in it? I mean, would you say yes or no, we achieve that, or by which percentage do we achieve it? 2050. Very short. Alexander.
I believe in technology, so I think by 2050 it's achievable. Earlier, I doubt. So I think we can do it by 2050. You know, 2050. If you think back, when was the first?
28 years only.
Yes, but
that's only 28 years. And an A350 is in operation. You buy a new one, and
but you know, 28 years. We go back 28 years. The amount of storage, you know, the amount of memory you have in the iPhone would have cost probably 200 million euros. So, and I did the math once. When we're looking at memory the cost of memory, of computer memory, back in the 85. Not the least, the Vietnam.
Okay,
so I believe in yes. I think it is.
I think it's not an if, I don't think it is a question, it is a must. So it will be done, we have to do it. It's a duty.
I think it's an incredibly ambitious goal. I don't think we achieve anything without setting ambitious goals, right? But at the end of the day, I think that our commercial industry around the world has the ability to achieve anything if it's incentivized correctly. So if you, I mean, I have no affiliation with SpaceX other than being a massive fan, but they saw an opportunity to dramatically reduce the cost of getting payloads to space, and they created the technology necessary to achieve it, and now they have an unparalleled cost advantage over their peers. That's a great example of how private industry can accomplish amazing things if the incentive is there for both profit and tax. So I think it's an ambitious goal, but if government can get its act together and provide the correct incentives, anything's possible.
Catalin.
For us at the governmental level, we have only one way. We have to do it, we have to deliver, we have to be prepared at the governmental level to produce the right type of regulation that will allow this to happen, and to work together with the university as a partner, because it's the only way to go.
Patricia?
I need to be the pessimist. I mean, I'm hopeful, but I also, 28 years is going to come very fast, and we're dealing with an industry, you know, the phones, I totally agree with what you're saying, but the phones have been replaced very quickly. I think you're dealing with aircraft when there is a lead time, many, many years to get aircraft, so unless you're planning on retrofitting every airplane or having a new fleet for every airline around the world, I just don't think it's realistic. I think we'll probably be closer to maybe 70%.
Okay.
How's that? I'll give you an idea.
Good.
I see what 28 years
Thank you.
yes. Won the prize.
We meet in 28 years here.
Yeah.
Discuss this question again. Thanks very much. Big applause.